Love your chopped up fish.
Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. This is the Thursday edition where we go over the biggest stories, or maybe not even the biggest stories. Some of them are the smallest stories.
It's swimming. How can it be a big story?
Yes, in the words of Lori Rawlings,
yes.
There are, there's no big time coaches.
I think he said that going after the famous coaches, he's like, there's no such thing as a famous swim coach.
There's no such thing as a famous swim coach. I am joined, as always, by the disgraced former assistant coach of University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, Joel Rawlings. Joel, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Good intro. I like that.
Are you still feeling disgraced, or have you gotten over the disgrace?
No, every day it's like you just put that burden back on my shoulders and wear it, and then at night take it back off. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
Instagram star and Speedo employee Erik Weiken joining us from Nebraska.
Yep. Erik. Doing all right. I was all cool. I think I was equally disgraced, or was I second in line for the disgrace at UW Milwaukee, Joel? I can't remember.
Were you coaching there at the same time? Is that how you guys?
I was the assistant below Joel, and we were right below 12-200s in some facet every day for 200 some days a year.
Was that a set you guys did every day, 12-200s?
A little bit, yeah. Sometimes it'd be like 16 150s. Sometimes it'd be 100s. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it was 24 100s.
Yeah.
Like my college.
It's a sprint day. It's 24 100s.
That's right.
This day it's going to be 6 400s.
Like my college swim coach on training camp when we did 10 200s breaststroke, and he was like, and I was, I was completely miserable. And he looked at me. He was like, "That's the last time we're doing that set." And then the next day we came in and did 2100s breaststroke on the same exact interval, literally the same set. So that was great. Yeah. Okay, let's get to some of this stuff. One of the things we're doing here is talking, we record on a Thursday, so it's just a happenstance. Wanted to talk a little bit about women's NCAAs. However, we have one event to react to. But I wonder, because you guys are a pair of Todd DeSorbo fanboys, I wonder if Virginia's swim or anything else that happened in that 800 freestyle relay has changed your sort of fawning predictions for what's going to happen with Virginia. Erik, what do you think?
I'm not changing anything at this point. 2+ second drop. It's their first win as an event. I don't really see anything changing at this point. They're swimming really, really well. There's a lot of other things going on that are typical to NCAAs. People adding time, people backing up. But yeah, I don't see UVA slowing down at this point.
Yeah, they improved, and honestly, they didn't even need to go faster to win that relay. And that, to me, was the thing where I looked at it and went like, oh, this is going to be, as somebody who didn't predict Virginia was going to win, I'm going, oh, so they actually they're swimming well. They've swum well in the first event, and they didn't even need to swim well to win. And that says a lot about how their team is looking for the weekend. Joel, what do you think looking at that 800 freestyle relay?
Yeah, I think it's funny because it's like 800 freestyle relay. So everyone's like, the coaches there are probably like, this shows we're holding on, or like the other side where it's like the relay didn't go so well. It's like, this shows nothing. We're fine. Right. But I think, obviously we drop time. They swam so well at ACCs. You're like, can they keep on going? I mean, this is nuts how well they're doing. And yeah, they're doing great. I wonder, you see in the NFL where teams that go from San Diego and they have to go play like the Falcons on the other side of the country, how those teams like never cover the spread or something. I wonder if someone's ever, because it's, such a numbers-based sport, someone could kind of go, okay, you got to travel the other end of the country with your team, whole different time zone. I wonder if anyone's ever kind of tracked that as far as like, is it taking how long does it take to kind of catch back up with the time shifts, especially getting up that early? Get on your schedule. Not making excuses for any teams out west or anything like that, but I'm just something I'd be curious about. Obviously, being right on the East Coast, it's nice for them, quick travel. I would assume Virginia's just going to keep on rolling. Again, with something like a 200, be able to maintain those times, that's pretty huge. I think it's kind of a lock.
Right. As a Cal backer, I mean, I think their relay improved as well. And, they didn't have their best swimmer on the relay. So, for them to be able to get third basically without using their best swimmer, I think that's at least keeps them in contention. They did what they needed to do on the first day. It's not like Virginia got a huge advantage there, like an 8-point advantage on that 800 freestyle relay. But they're probably, I'd be really curious to see on day 2 whether they're able to contend with Virginia on some of these other relays where they're seated first, aka all the other ones, And
I think we kind of missed out too, not talking enough about how good Kentucky has become in the past, 8-10 years, like that.
They swam incredible.
Yeah.
They had such a, they had an SEC meet, again, like you're saying, where they swam so good and everybody was heaping praise. I mean, there was even some podcaster who was talking about, is Lars Jansson the number 1 Danish-American swim coach in America? And I think he's maybe now the top Scandinavian American swim coach.
Yeah, my wife is just talking about that too. Hey,
Right.
how does it rank on Scandinavian swim coaches?
Right. What's your top 5?
Yeah.
Maybe even Nordic. If we can throw Finland in there as well. What are your top 5 Nordic American swim coaches? Who are
easily the top 3?
Podcast, reaching to go, yeah, I'm out. I'm good.
We're just going down and further into this narrow set of people who are interested.
This is my channel. One dude out there this is the one.
I go to this channel for a discussion of who are the top Nordic American swim coaches. I can't even, off the top of my head, I can't think of the third Nordic American. Even if I expand it to those 4 countries, I actually even can't think of a third person. So as far as I know, I'm in the top 3.
Some big moves though for teams.
Go ahead, Erik.
I was going to say some big moves for teams that we saw. Ohio State jumping from 13th to 7th. A fantastic relay. A lot of solid splits and good leadoffs on an A&M. And the biggest surprise, maybe not, was they had NC State took 2 of their ACC guns off of that relay. Looks like they're putting them on the other 4, but to go from 5th to 17th, I hope the gamble is worth it. That's a huge jump.
Yeah, you can't be happy. I mean, with 17 teams in a relay, and you come away with the one team with a goose egg in that event.
Yeah, Julia Poole, excuse me, sorry for butchering your name. She had a good leadoff, but it's you took off Burkhoff and Alons, and that's 6-7 plus seconds right there. So
yeah. The other thing I noticed just looking at these splits, you can see how heat placing, and this shout out to Shackelford. We're tough on Jake Shackelford on this podcast. But I actually want to give him a shout out on this because he had this observation when he came in. When we had a changing of the guard here at Wahoo's last night, his practice was finishing up and I was coming in to coach and we were talking 800 freestyle relay. He was talking about how, some of the teams chasing Cal in their heat, if you look down the splits, some of these teams really kind of hurt themselves because Cal was so strong up front in their relay. And then on the back half, they were trying to chase. So, you've got people splitting 23-1, on the first 50 of their 200 freestyle, 49 on the first 100. And then as a swim coach, that's near and dear to my heart, just watching people do an 800 freestyle relay and overswim the first 100. And it's heartening to see that even at the top NCAA level, it still happens, People just get into the competition. They try to make up all that ground.
I'm feeling so good, Coach. I was feeling so good.
Feeling so good. And then I was feeling so not good.
Not really. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I guess we're not allowed to cite Cleet Keller's excellent race strategy in 2004, now that he's potentially facing, federal charges. But
you East Coast cancel culturist?
Yeah. Because Cleet Keller's been canceled, we can't cite what a good job he did holding off Ian Thorpe in the 2004 Olympics when he didn't, overswim that first 100, and Thorpe sort of caught all the way back up to him, and then he sort of just was able to swim home.
Swam like a distance swimmer.
Yeah. Anyway, Cleet Keller, sorry about being canceled. Anything else you guys want to say about the NCAA meet before we move on based on this one event?
You got one.
Erik, you got anything? Or you all?
I'm excited to see how this does translate. We talked about this being maybe a possibly better indicator of how a week is going to go, because it is a 200 and it's not just a 2 medley. Because, at this level, all of these girls can fake that 50, but it's really difficult to fake that 200 on day one. The West Coast jump, that's 3 hours. That's Joel trying to do this podcast at 5:30 in the morning. It'll be interesting to see how they adjust and how their weekend hopefully gets better.
It actually is a really good explanation for why Joel's performance is so bad on this podcast week in, week out. Yeah. I think so we should let him host one time, you know what I mean? Just so that it's kind of fair and he can actually sort of stand a chance to make some good points and that kind of thing, Right, Joel?
That's an excellent point there. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. It's one of those, it's weird. I never thought about just that obviously, the huge travel difference, but after listening to Austin Surhoff talk about, just getting out and kind of getting in tune with the sun and things like that, the circadian rhythms, I never really started thinking about that. And it's weird, like in science, in swimming, you study every number you possibly can, everything you possibly can try to take care of, every variable. And I never even thought about, I wonder if someone's ever kind of looked at like that, because we're always like, oh, they're missing their taper. It's like, well, yeah, they get up at 4:30 in the morning right now. They're probably not doing.
So I'm going to have Danny Corman on the podcast next week, the assistant coach of California Bears, and I'll for sure I'm going to ask her that, because maybe right, maybe I'm going to get her on here and she's going to go, oh yeah, we start waking up early 3 weeks before the meet starts. We have a strategy for that. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a thing. Much to the chagrin of my wife, sometimes when we were younger and we were going to Denmark for the summer, I would start waking up at 3 a.m, to pre-adjust to Danish time. And she wasn't a huge fan of that. I don't know why. It's not a weird thing to do at all when you're just going on vacation to another country. Okay. We want to talk about something that's came out of our group chat. Was this swim slam story of a swimmer that was transferring from University of Arkansas to Hendricks College. And of course, it's got the extra super clickbaity title here. Faster than school records in 11 events, Allie Rogers transfers to D3 Hendricks. And there she is in the article, smiling with her Warriors swimming and diving shirt. I guess that's the mascot of Hendricks. And they've got a quote from her in there. She just says she's going pre-med. She wants to go to medical school after college. She feels like this gives her a better opportunity to pursue that. She's excited about the coaches that are going there, lists some times for her, which are, as the article notes, some really good. I mean, she's going to be a really good Division III swimmer. Joel, what was your reaction to this article?
I thought it was kind of like, man, this is going to be a really slow news day. But it's one of those things where it's like, it outlines everything that I think is really good about Division III. You see kids that are going into engineering or nursing or pre-med or something, you're like, at some point you're gonna make a choice. You know,
Right.
In my opinion, I mean, there's obviously not every Division I school is going to be like that, but yeah, at some point you're going to get to that wall where you want to go into athletic training, you got to put in your hours. You have to do that. You want to go into nursing, you're going to have that class that's going to conflict. It's just how it is. It's the nature of the beast. And I think a lot of times just when you see kids choosing colleges, they have to be honest with themselves, you know, before they go into it. They're always like, oh, I've got to be at Division I. That's going to be whatever, you know, mythical thing they put into it, you know. Right. But at the end of the day, it's like you got to go for your school. I mean, she's going to be, you know, 4 years, she's going to be a swimmer that you know, that had a nice career, but then her real career is going to start, you know, right. And that's going to be what has to be outlined for her. So, I mean, you know, it's a nice school. She's going to be in the middle lane. I got to leave 10 minutes early for coach. That's cool. You do you, girl. Be right back.
Hey, coach, I got a lab. I'm going to be late to practice. All right.
And I've got no problem with that. You know, it's right. Like, again, all these people are like, you know, I want to be at this certain level. It's like, you want to be on the outside lane, that, you know, where the GA might see you sometime, you know, running a stopwatch for you. You want to be in, you know, lane 4 doing your practice. You got, oh, my arm's a little tight, coach. Come on out. Get the trainer in here. Right. You know, it's one of those things where it's nice to go where you're going to be appreciated and wanted. And that's the cool thing about Division III is there's some good swimming. I mean, Emory, Johns Hopkins, Denison, Kenyon, those teams, they're fast. And I think there's a lot of people, you know, obviously it's a tragedy when the Division I team shut down.
University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, really good.
I've heard good things about them.
Yeah, they went 119 in a 2 free relay once.
I've heard they've got a good 2 free relay, but again, there's a lot of schools out there, you know, that are going to offer what you need. And again, it's like you take the opportunity to be in that middle lane. It's not all about who you're swimming with. You got a coach who's going to be making sure your classes are going well. You know, It's like you're gonna be late. It's okay. We'll figure something out of it. No worries.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think you make a lot of good points there about Division III swimming. It's, you know, it's startling to me, like the contrast between this article that sort of like insinuates like, oh, she's so much better than the team that she's going to. Whereas like once you sort of read a little bit more in depth, you go, well, but on the other end, like somebody who's a 56 and 100 backstroke, you know, 201 in the 200 backstroke, some of the times that she's got listed there, you know, she's not the best swimmer in Division III, so she's still got competition above her that she can swim up to, that she's gonna be able to go up against. Whereas on the other hand, yes, she does have this really strong opportunity, and you know, I think like I was talking, you make the point about majors and stuff. Like I was talking tangentially with somebody about a prospective student athlete, not somebody from my team, not somebody from a team anywhere near me. You know, they're trying to go to a Division I power conference school, and they wanted to study nursing. And I just gave the immediate side eye. I said, "Do they know that like that's like a 0.001% chance of success? Like there's just." You know, not that I think that you shouldn't be able to study nursing and swim in a Division I power conference school. It's just that I've not seen it.
No, you can have a very successful 2 years. I mean, it's not a success thing. You have a wonderful 2 years, and then junior year you're gonna be so stressed out and frazzled. It's like, oh man, pump the brakes here and choose.
It's not a calculation that a lot of people make. Eric, what was your, you know, as a former Division I power conference swimmer, what was your reaction to this? Are you, I can't believe I phrased it that way, you know, but go ahead.
The Big 12 that had 5 teams back then before some of us got dropped.
The Big 12/5 in swimming. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I think in, you know, swimming at that level in the late 90s, I wish I would have known maybe a little bit more. Division III has changed over 20 years. Mm-hmm. So I could see myself in high school being like trying to go to a powerhouse D3 school and having a lot of great competition that way. And maybe I would have been at NCAAs on my own. I was a meet cut swimmer. I made the meet on a relay. But there are some kids who want to go for the D1 experience just to be on a D1 team, and that's all well and good, but there are a lot of kids that miss out on being able to contribute to championship level teams at Division II and Division III just because they think college swimming is D1 and it's not anything else. There's this weird pass-fail like relationship with the sport that a lot of kids have. And a lot of the kids that I coached on the back third of my career was like, there's nothing wrong with being a Division II or Division III NCAA All-American. Right. There's nothing wrong with that.
In fact, there's a lot right with that.
Yeah, there's a lot going there because when you get to the headhunters and the job people, they're not going to see D2 or D3 because, like Joel's wife, they don't care, right? They don't care. They just know that you are an All-American in a sport that requires a lot of dedication, and here's your contract for your new job.
Right.
Like that's kind of what it boils down to. And I had firsthand experience watching a teammate try to go through architecture at University of Minnesota.
That's another one.
So transferring up there after the program was dropped in Nebraska, it just being in a different academic environment as it was, than being a roommate to somebody who was an architecture major and watching them get done with practice, have dinner, whatever, and then go off to the architecture college, and get into the lab and then not come back for 4+ hours. They're getting home after midnight, and then they're supposed to go to morning practice the next day and compete at a top of the Big Ten level. Some people are wired to be able to do all that naturally. I don't know how, but it was painful to watch.
Yeah.
To watch that schedule.
I did have a swimmer at Georgia Tech. I mean, one of my sort of most proud accomplishments was I had a swimmer at Georgia Tech who midway, actually it was after his freshman year, switched into a design major. And that meant that he had, 2 4 to 5 hour blocks that would conflict with afternoon practice. And the kind of crazy stuff you can do when you're 27 years old or whatever, and you just freshly married and you have no kids at home, so I just ran another practice for him on those days, just for him.
But that's a rare thing, though. I mean, not a lot of Division I schools are going to do that. Right. And also, I think, it's an interesting thing when you talk about kids, like where you're saying, like Erik was just saying about how, they got this D1 idea of what they want to do, is a lot of these kids, you look at these relays we're talking about right now at NCAAs. Those are 4 amazing swimmers, at Virginia, at Cal, whatever. And then there's 4 that are amazing swimmers that didn't make that A relay. They're on the B relay. Their whole life, they've probably never been on anything lower than an A relay. Or you come from a team where you are the team. You're the franchise. You got tape around you where, like, do not bump into that woman. Right. She's our trials qualifier, or whatever it is. And now you're going off and you're swimming on a team where it's like, oh, you're a trials qualifier? It's cute. You get like a T-shirt for that. It's one of those things where it's like everyone here is a trials qualifier.
That's right. And
so it's a certain mentality where, especially if you've always been at the top, and then all of a sudden now you're in lane 8 with it's like the coach doesn't really talk to me or much. It's a different mindset to be like, I want to be in the middle lane. I want to be on that A relay. I want what they have. And that's a different mindset that a lot of people don't have. And I think a lot of times, like for guys, you're like a late developer. You start out as a freshman, you're at the bottom of the food chain, you work your way up to the top of the food chain. And in women's swimming, that's a different sport entirely, in that women are really good at 13, 14, and then all of a sudden, all these other 13, 14s are coming up. Like, to be able to keep on competing like that, it's hard. And I think that's the thing that's interesting when you're choosing a team. It's not bad to be like the best swimmer in a team. It's a pretty good thing. You get a lot of little perks in there. You get a statue out in the front of the building versus it's nice having you. But then on the other side too, when you're again, nothing against the rest of the Hendricks team, but in the article he pointed out how so much faster as she is, it's going to be tough on that woman too, where she's got her goals. Those don't change. So if she's 56 in the backstroke, she's trying to go like 55. And when she goes 57 and she's still 8-10 seconds faster than the second woman on their team, it's hard for the teammates to realize that they need to go pick her up too. Because it's she's from 57.
Yeah. Why aren't you happy with your 57? Like, that's so much faster than me, right? You know? But.
Exactly. And like you're saying too, on Division I, and I had a pretty good swimmer, the same thing where she swam Division I, but at some point you get to talk where it's like, you know, we're paying you to go swim here, not really to go to school here.
Right.
Make a new choice. You know, you see in football and basketball, there's a lot of criminal justice majors. Like, that's probably whatever works with the schedule. You know, it's like architecture, that doesn't work with our schedule. It's just good luck.
Yeah. Speaking of late bloomers, something, you know, we talked about Austin Surhoff maybe a couple months ago here on this podcast. Now,
feels like it's like dog years on this podcast.
Yeah. A couple months ago, but now we're going to go for another guy who's swimming pretty fast. This guy, James Fike, swimming fast in his late 30s, going PBs and 200 breaststroke, and not like a little PB. Like it made a pretty big drop in the 200 breaststroke. Erik, just sort of introduce a little bit what's going on with James Fike so people understand what we're talking about here.
The name sounds familiar, it's Fike Swim. Yeah. He's got his own swimwear company, and I had the pleasure of meeting him for the first time last January, pre-COVID, at a meet, and he was, swimming to be in shape, still love to compete, just like any competitive swimmer. It's like you got to have that end point, something to go through, and it being the face of a company, as a swim company, you can't be in crappy shape. So why not try to push the limits of what you can do with the time you have? So it was an experimentation thing with not having a lot of time. So where do you put it? And that was when, first got introduced to this path that he's on. He's going 54 in the 100 breast and now going this 158. And saw him at U.S. Open again, so the long course, and trying to get trials cuts and still doing his thing with the swim company and everything else that he's involved in. And then again, seeing him at Dallas, we've been able to run into each other. I've been his unofficial film crew for his races, so you can watch him afterwards and see how they're going. So, but just a really down-to-earth guy and just experimenting with what he feels works for him. So he's got a good enough background in swimming. He swam in Texas, so he's got some kind of established idea of what worked at specific times. But now being like with Austin Surhoff, being in touch with his body and just seeing what he's doing with that, like weights and more time in the weight room, probably doing way more power work and doing a lot of thoughtful practice with the kind of volume that his 38-year-old body can handle.
I guess what distinguishes it for me from Austin Surhoff is, I sort of looked at the Austin Surhoff thing and went like, okay, so here's a guy who was very good high school swimmer, like really, really top. I mean, he made Olympic trial semifinal when he was still in high school in the 200 IM. So always kind of like a phenom, and went to college and swam all these 200s and 400s and stuff. And so I looked at him more as somebody who's like, okay, now he's taken, he's in touch with his body. He's taken a different focus, and he's tapping into some events that he never trained when he was a college swimmer to be as fast as he could be in the 50 and 100 free. And now he's doing that, and he's got, he's getting those newbie gains in the 50 and 100 free, like from focusing on those. What I find really interesting about Fike is like, 100 breaststroke, 200 breaststroke, these were his best races back in the day, right? So it's not as if he wasn't trying in college to swim as fast as he possibly could in these races, but now he's still finding, and he was doing it at Texas, I mean, now he's still finding a new gear to me, that's even sort of another level of impressiveness. I don't know what you think, Joel, but.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, especially about like sort of it was like a pivot into different events.
Right.
With this, it's pretty cool, obviously, to see someone to keep on going like he has been. I remember, like, sometimes you'll see like an article come through. It's like, hey, this is about swimming, like an actual scientific article about swimming. You're like, these swimmers dropped 10 seconds with this methodology, and you start, they're all started as 106 100-yard freestylers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm throwing that away. But obviously, like you were saying, this guy swam at Texas. I mean, it wasn't like, he learned to swim at, 18, and then he's dropping 10 seconds now. He's swimming, at a high level his whole life. I think, in a sense, to kind of pump the brakes a little bit it's the breaststroke. It's a different race entirely in that you've got this impulse of power, and then what you're doing after that impulse is the most important part. And so it's as far as races go like that, I think it's pretty conducive like that. We think about the flexibility of the knees and things like that and how you need that impulse, but just a little bit I've heard about how he's lifting and things, that power, the quick bursts and things that you can fit in with your time schedule, that's breaststroke. You jump off a wall, you're underwater, and you maintain your core integrity. If you can hit a breakout, the dude's huge, 6-7 strokes, get to the next wall, get through it. And again, it's an impulse glide, but not gliding as in you're going soft. It's gliding where you're maintaining that core attention through the whole race. And so I think it works really well with what he does as far as out of the water. And I don't think, a lot of times people read this and then they start going into obviously ultra fast race pace. This is the way to go. Everything needs to be modified. It's like, this works really well, I think, when you get older. I think when you're younger, you need that time in the water because it's such a foreign environment. It's basically like a zero gravity sport. We don't have anywhere else. I mean, if I'm walking down the street, theoretically, I could be training for a marathon.
Right.
If I'm walking down the street, I'm not training for swimming. You have to be in the water to swim. And so obviously what this guy did in his background was kind of developed a feel for the water, and that feel is your traction. And now he's been able to kind of do something where he's putting power into traction, where he's holding the water. I don't think it's that mythical base thing that people keep talking about. I think it's about, just has the repetitions in the water. He knows how the water feels. He knows where the thickest water is and he's able to put it in there. I mean, you take a triathlete, they get off the bus. It's like, man, that guy's an athlete. They get in the water. It's like, yeah, he's kind of a flounder.
Right.
This dude's an athlete, and he knows where the water's at. He can feel it, and he can go.
Well, I have something sort of a similar perspective, like along some of the same lines, but maybe with a twist on it. I was recording a podcast on Tuesday with this English guy, Jamie Fowler, and we did.
Really, you have other podcasts?
Yes.
You should talk about those.
Yeah. So. We talked quite a bit about USRPT when I had him on my podcast, and he had just had Brent Russell on. So we talked a little bit about it on the other end too, because he was curious about when I had used it, and now, like sort of the transition to where I'm coaching with a lot more volume, a lot more, like I've switched like the construction of my practices. The intensity is quite a bit lower and the volume is higher. And one of the things I just think is whenever you're a coach, and like 99.9% of coaches, they're looking at a big group of swimmers, right? And they're trying to come up with a practice that is going to get most of the swimmers in the water to improve, right? And I know that the way I'm constructing practice right now, some of the swimmers I have in the water, they just react to it really well. They react to it really well. And I knew, but also when I coached USRPT, that like very strict USRPT, I had kids on my team that, man, the physiological response they got from training like that was pretty amazing. So that is to say, in the case of somebody like James Fike, the chances that the team that you are on, that the construction of the practice is the one that's going to get the best possible physiological response from you is just very, very low. And it's very hard to figure out, are you somebody that has a great response to high volume training? Are you somebody that has a great response to race pace training? So, I think the lesson here too is, and again, that there's so much more nuance to it. Like, I think no matter what practice you're running, one of the things you can do as a coach that makes you like sort of distinguishes you from average to good is, can you take people who are in the water and make adjustments on an individualized basis for them so that they respond better to a more generalized workout plan. But on the other end, it shows that the swimmers can play a huge role in terms of figuring out how what they're doing in the water, how they can tailor it in a way that they're going to get the best possible response from it. And I think, like, obviously, Fike, he's done a ton of work to figure out how he can train in a way that's really, really efficient, because you just don't have 25 hours a week when you're a guy in his late 30s to put into your training. So you have to find something that, even when you do less training time, for instance, than you did when maybe you were 22, that the physiological response is going to be really, really high, and you're going to get a lot out of it. That was my rant. Erik, do you have anything else to add on Fike?
Yeah, well, I look at two different things, and I think about a teammate I had when I was in high school who not nearly this same muscle mass that is on James Fike, but certainly that similar build. And just thinking about if you have the space, you have the bandwidth to be able to create a little bit more specific work, you can reach some of these kids so they don't end up out of it. Like, you are limited to sometimes the space and the time and within a practice like yours. And when you're doing a practice that you're writing, Chris, and if you are really engaged in it, like coaches should be, you do make those adjustments. So they can work within your system of a little bit longer volume, but just tweaking things to get them what they need. And like you said, just being a little bit more open and flexible and willing to put in that extra kind of 10, 15 minutes of work and evaluating your athletes as they are in the water and on land as to what you need to do. And I'm hoping, and the other thing is I'm hoping that this article gets passed amongst the masters community, right? Because it's not just, Austin's a fair bit younger. It's not fair to talk about 25-year-olds who are just recently removed, from that and put into that age group. But somebody who's 38, in putting up the kinds of times that he's doing and doing the kinds of training that he is doing, and just being a bit more thoughtful in using the space and time that he has. And it's, I haven't been to enough masters workouts to make a broad blanket, assumptive statement that they're doing crappy work, but
I have.
Okay.
So, I haven't found a master's practice that I enjoy attending yet.
But I think, when you look at something like this and you have guys who are trying to compete again, like whether or not you 100% agree with how some things are structured, and I'm looking at the workout right now and just looking at it, is like this stuff is engaging because it feels like there's a purpose behind it. Yeah. It feels like what he's doing is really trying to at least translate to what he wants. And if it doesn't work, then he's willing to go back to the drawing board and try to sort it out as best he can. And I don't think that that's maybe done enough, or maybe the time, the bandwidth for masters coaches really isn't there. I don't know. All I know is I swim at a Y, and every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there's a masters group that trains before I go. And one of the days, the practice literally said 80-25 sprint. That was the set. It was 80-25 sprint. And they had erased all the detail that they had gone through. But it's like,
I think we just want
that's
sponsorship from the Masters program. Nice job, Erik. Maybe we can pick up something from Fike, though. Thanks.
But yeah, that's probably the two biggest things is, if you've got athletes who are lined up like that, you don't have the actual ability to separate them in a lane at the high school level. Don't discount them, because you may be their only option. There may not be anything around for this more muscular kid to go to another place. So, don't create problems for yourself, but at the same time, don't be afraid to have that conversation and be like, hey, every third one, you're going to hit it, and you're only going to go half the distance of everybody else, and you're just going to sit and recover. And don't feel bad about it.
I think one of the points I want to highlight that's really good that you made there, Erik, because it resonates with me. Now, I'm 1 year younger than James Fike. I'm 37 years old, and I remember reading a nascent swim blog back in the lead up to 2008. Now I forget the name of it, but Scott Goldblatt and John Lesko were involved. Mike Gustafson, maybe somebody out there can remind me what the name of this thing was that eventually went defunct. But there was so much discussion about Dara Torres at the time. And I remember a couple Masters guys were getting really fired up. They said, she's definitely doping. She's definitely doping because there's no way you can just swim this fast at this age. It's just way, 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 way too hard. And I remember, reading that. I was 24 at the time, and I was training just a tiny little bit, and I was still swimming faster than I was in college. And I was like, these guys are just jealous. They're just jealous. And it's funny to watch my own perspective change over time. Now that I'm 37, and when I try to get back in shape, I realize how much harder it is. And I realize how much harder it's going to be when I'm 47, or, when I'm like Joel, I'm almost in my 70s, it's going to be that much harder. I have a little bit, I find myself a little bit more jealous. I find myself a little bit more, on the other end, a little bit more impressed, I think I wouldn't have been as impressed by how hard it is, what he's doing just with what's going on in his aging body. It's really, really hard to be in peak physical condition when you're 38 years old.
I think what you should do for this podcast too is kind of emphasize that you are only 1 year younger, and just put a side-by-side picture, because you guys are identical twins. I couldn't believe, the musculature especially. I think that side-by-side, and maybe we could have a little comment below. Right. Which one is the trained athletic professional, and which one hides in the basement of the Wahoo swim team with headphones on? I think it'd be an excellent idea. But I think when you go to master swimming, I think the thing is, it's kind of like all levels of swimming, where it's interesting to see where people kind of like my kid right now is trying to swim. You're like, if my wife walked in, like, hey, what kind of pool does Michael Phelps train in? 25 yard, 50 meter. My 7-year-old here, what kind of pool is he training in? 25 yard or 50 meter. So it's kind of the same thing. You don't adjust the hoop for the little kids. No, we just keep it going. And so I think a lot of times we'll take what we did at, 18. Well, why don't we just cut that in half? We'll do that for the Masters. And then what are you going to do for the little kids? We'll cut it in fourths and do it for the little kids. It's again, you're like, I think we'd be a little too cookie cutter. And everyone knows, each age group is going to have a different need, a different value system. And I think, again, not to bag on, I coach master swimming too. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where you're going to be like, a lot of times as coaches, we're going to fall back to what we know. Erik was talking about at the start of it, 2200s. It's like, we're going to do that. For master's practice, you're like, I got up at 5. I've got other crap to do. We're going to just fall back onto something I know versus tailoring it. And, with what you're saying about with Fike, again, it's like, I'll write a workout for a breaststroke. Do a couple power cleans, do a plank for a minute, do that 8 times. There you go. You just you train for the 100 breaststroke. Again, not minimizing what he's doing, but it's not that hard to stylize something for a single event or two like that. Versus, okay, we got our whole team now, we're going to do power clean. I can't do that. Right. And so I think part of it is the underlying thing with Surhoff and with this is taking ownership of your swims and getting what you can out of every practice. You got pool time, take advantage of it, especially with COVID. Get in and do what you can, but knowing that that's just a portion of what you're going to need. So if you want to become, really great at anything, obviously you're going to have to do some stuff on your own as well, and use the coaches more as a resource and as a guide. Then this is everything. Now go home. It's like, trying to live the athletic lifestyle for a good hour and a half, that doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
Especially when you reach 70 like myself.
All right. We have, I think we've talked that one through. We're here to deliver our final monologues. Erik, since Joel was just talking, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Wish I had a bit more to talk about in my monologue here. Been a interesting finish to the fall, or to the short course season for us, and being able to take some time off these next couple of days has been really great. A little bit of travel towards the back end, being able to get to sectionals, being able to see sectional swimming, but really resetting and looking at what can be done, starting up next week, both from a job perspective, but also me in training. Chris talked about getting back in the water and just seeing the stuff that James is doing. Think about the stuff that Austin is doing, and just trying to reevaluate for myself. And I'm hoping that you all coaches have the opportunity to do the same, and just seeing what you can do for yourself to get a better lifestyle out of it, compartmentalizing and things like that. So taking advantage of these few days, and I hope you all have the opportunity to do the same.
Great. Joel, what do you got?
I've being on the West Coast now, I bump into more like former Cal swimmers. And so obviously North Thornton had such a huge career, and especially everything he influenced here, and just seeing the health problems he's in right now. It's pretty sad. I saw like some friends of friends kind of things posting pictures, and it was pretty interesting. Like this one had a picture of Nort sitting behind his desk in his office just doing paperwork. And I think that's one of those kind of things where when you coach, that kind of hits you more than anything, because like the swimmer, you see him coach on deck. As a parent, you see the coach on deck. If you coach college, I think of all the times I'm in my office doing paperwork. And it was the thing that was kind of neat and sad at the same time was just, here's this guy in this office, and it looks like, probably just some little trailer kind of an office, little window, metal filing cabinet, classic kind of old school coach thing. And just the professionalization of the sport now, and just everything's got to become ultra modern, ultra sleek and things. And to see, again, just again, a guy at a desk with a pencil writing a workout, it's pretty cool. And it's pretty sad to think just, it says kind of the things that we lose. I think a lot of those coaches back in, when you're hired at a college, you're hired to teach and you're going to coach something. And so a lot of times coaches like, you're going to coach the swim team and women's gymnastics. So you're going to coach track and field and football. Just got kind of assigned. And I really kind of missed the idea of just that professional that was like, I don't know anything about this sport, but I'm a professional. I'm going to do what I can to learn about this sport. And so I think a lot of these older coaches were really good with just human movement and coming in and coaching human movement, rather than this is the way Ian Thorpe swims, this is the way Missy Franklin swims, whatever the flavor of the day might be, and try to tailor it, versus guys are just like, let's get in and swim a little bit, and things develop. I had one of the master swimmers swim at Cal just before Nort got there. He swam in the Olympics back in the 50s, and so he's obviously well before Nort got there. And I'd be like, well, what did you do for training? He's like, oh, well, I actually trained before they invented intervals.
Right.
And like
Eddie Reese apparently was one of the first people to train intervals. Like he sort of talks about this sometimes, and he's 79 years old. So.
Yeah. And so this guy's 85, 86. No. Yeah. And so like, what'd you do? And so he swam at Cal before Nort. So he'd always talk about, that young guy Nort. And he's like, oh, one day the coach would just bring a rope, tied me to the guard chair, and I'd swim against the guard chair for an hour. Other days I'd swim a mile. And it's just kind of neat, again, where again, as their development is just so different than you think about age group swimming now. These kids, you go swim in the lake, swim in an ocean, kind of a stroke would develop from that, and then you get corrected on what you learned yourself. So again, kind of touching back to everything we talked about with Fike and with Suroff, again, they're a little more in tune with their body because they've been coaching themselves versus having other people. You've got to look more like Michael Phelps. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of things that obviously we lose when we start losing this generation of coaches, and obviously losing people that I think just really great human beings too. So that's kind of sad. Yeah.
Yeah. And just one more point I want to heap on top of how awesome North Thornton is. I mean, I think he's provided a model as well one of the biggest advantages Cal had post Nort's retirement was the way that he sort of seamlessly transitioned from being head coach of that team to being the most overqualified volunteer coach in America, and so, I always looked at that and thought like, wow, I would love to be anywhere near that successful in my coaching career. But I think I would also love to just be able to just do a little piece of what I was doing. And I'd hear him talk about it where he goes, I don't have to do any more paperwork. I just get to do the fun part and show up and coach. I think it showed really a pure love for the profession and the being able to just work with swimmers and coaches and do stuff that was really incredible. And it's made him a great role model, I think, for a lot of people out there.
And I think for you to get to your goals, you should set those baby steps up. Like first, just find a pool deck that you're welcome on. Would be a nice start. Right. And then the one where you're allowed coming back. That'd be awesome. So if we can just get, again, you set a goal, set the steps towards that goal. I think that's the way to go about it. That's a good call.
That's right. You need process goals. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So my final point, I'm talking a bit of positive psychology this week. I recorded a podcast on Tuesday because I think we're at a really interesting point where a lot of people have been using pessimism sort of in a protective way. And, but there's another thing that being married to somebody who's not a swimmer, one of the first things that she noticed about me, and I noticed this in a ton of swimmers, you can't unsee it once she's pointed it out to me, is that swimmers have this unique ability to torture themselves as they engage in the sport. And it is really a pessimistic exercise. I was talking to an athlete a few days ago that said like, well, I really dread swimming the 200 free. And I said, well, so are you swimming it in the next meet? And they said, well, yeah, of course I'm swimming it in the next meet. I didn't swim well when I did it in the last meet, so I've got to swim it. And I was thinking like, okay, so let's walk through the logic here. You have this horrible feeling about a race. That probably doesn't help you to do well in the race, but your solution is, and subsequently you don't do well in the race. And then your solution is, I'll just keep racing it until a good result happens. And I think, one of the points I want to make here is that in the swimming world, I think many, many people don't realize how much they use kind of a internal pessimism as a motivator. Like that their whole motivational structure is basically built off of this, my wife calls it torture, but this system of self-punishment that they'll not really capitalize on their successes, but if they fail, they will double down on being even harder on themselves as a way of succeeding. And I've seen so many people who've just sort of through that progressive doubling down of, I've come in below, when I say failure, I've come in below my own expectations. So I just need to be that much harder on myself, when maybe sometimes the solution is admitting like, this stuff's really hard. And I didn't achieve what I needed to do. And maybe it's not all my fault. I think, sometimes that's really, really hard to do in the sport of swimming, but I do think, a progressive motivational structure that just is about telling yourself what a bad basically swimmer you are and doubling down is a recipe for kind of completely losing your motivation. And I say that from personal experience. I think that's probably, when I look back at my own college swimming career and stuff that happened after that, like I know that that I made that mistake, that I, whenever things didn't go my way, I just saw if I could turn the dial up a little bit more and be just a little bit harder on myself. And it took, getting out from college, becoming an adult, meeting my wife, for her, to look at me and be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you like abusing your own body right now? Cause I'd be like, I'm so out of shape, proved by what happened on Friday. Now I need to work out for 3 hours on Saturday. And she'd be like, what is wrong with you? Like, maybe you're really tired. Maybe you need to take a nap on Saturday, So I just, a word to all swimmers out there. The solution is not always that you are suffering from some deep personal failing and doubling down on that. And so be kind to yourself, be empathetic to yourself. It's not going to make you worse. In fact, it could really help you to get better. All right, guys, thank you for joining me. Thanks for another week on the Swim Brief. And we'll look forward to recapping some of what's happened at the Women's NCAA meet with you guys next Thursday, doing a quick analysis of the men's 800 freestyle relay at that time, and, probably finding one more Swim Swam article to get fired up about. All right?
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
Talk to you guys.